Kia ora koutou, katoa. It's nice to be back with you. I've been away overseas, and then when I returned I got a bad bout of COVID, so my voice has been slow to recover. The story of David and Goliath, which will be read this morning on Sunday, is about a teenager without the physical prowess, armour or abilities of seasoned soldiers, going off to face a giant of a man before whom the Israelite army quivered with fear. David took his slingshot and on the way to meeting Goliath picked up 5 smooth stones out of a stream. The rest is history. Although it's not history, that is. This is a tall tale to support David's claim to kingship, and in all probability such an encounter never happened. James K. Baxter, the New Zealand poet, wrote in the 1970s a piece where he likened Goliath to the destructive forces in our New Zealand society. A Goliath, about which he wrote, who numbs our soul whenever he touches it. These forces, Baxter said, drove some of the vulnerable and wounded to shelter in his community at Haurima, Jerusalem, on the Whanganui River. Baxter also identified 5 smooth stones with which he would confront this Goliath. Stones such as hospitality to strangers, communal work for the common good, and speech that begets peace and understanding. Unlike the biblical text, though, Baxter is unsure about the outcome of this battle. Recently, I read some pieces by the American cultural commentator David Brooks, and although quite different from me in his political background, I found much to ponder. In terms of a Baxterian approach to Goliath, Brooks identifies the huge changes in many Western countries through the 1960s and 70s when we moved away from a community and neighbourhood culture. To the question, for example, do you trust your neighbours? The US answer in the 1970s was 60% yes. Whereas today, only 30% yes. And only 19% of millennials say yes. I suspect this would be the same in Aotearoa, and in urban areas more distrust. Not that everything was idyllic in that community and neighbourhood culture, far from it. Racism, sexism, homophobia were rife, so was the pressure to conform. And there was much good in the individualism, the anti-institutionalization, the movements like civil rights and feminism. All these arose in the 1960s and 70s. Yet now, 50 years on, we can see that individualism has morphed into a hyper-individualism. To quote Brooks, if you tell people the purpose of life is self-actualization, self-fulfillment, self, you're going to weaken the connections between people. And when this weakening in social, political, and economic structures consistently favours individual betterment over community care and solidarity, we will see and are seeing a raft of destructive forces. Loneliness, distrust, social pain, mental ill health, and a loss of meaning. This Goliath in the garb of hyper-individualism is propped up by a series of lies, like the lie of self-sufficiency, like the lie that we make ourselves happy, like the lie that things make us happy, and things are a sign of God's blessing. These lies are seductive in that they have a little bit of truth in them, but much more untruth. For the things that really make people happy are the deep relationships of life, the losing of self-sufficiency. Similarly, there is the lie of meritocracy, the lie you are what you accomplish, the lie that you can earn dignity by attaching yourself to a brand, an ideology, a religion, the lie that achieving things will earn your way to love. These lies too have a little bit of truth in them, and much more untruth. And the lies have ugly underbellies, like the notion that people who have achieved a little bit more than others are actually worth a little bit more than others. And speaking of underbellies, we need to be careful of the faux community called tribe. Tribe pretends to be community, but it's not. Community is based on affection for each other. Tribe is based on a mutual dislike, even fear, even hatred of others. Tribe is about us versus them, friend versus enemy. Politics is war. Build walls, erect barriers. What smooth stones, then, should we take from the stream to try to combat this Goliath? The task before us is no less than reweaving the social fabric of society. At a time in our history when that fabric is frayed and tearing. For example, the voluntary association, service clubs, sports clubs, faith groups, organizations working for the common good are all in decline. Sure, there are exceptions and we celebrate them, but the macro trend is decline. Whatever stones we choose, like Baxter said, I'm not sure we can win. Success is not assured, but then whoever said faith was about winning? Mac McCarter writes of this task of weaving the social fabric. We must move from episodically pathos-provoked community. And here he's referring to people coming together around a time like a flood or an earthquake. Move to a conscious, ethos-evoked community based on the transcendent imperative of our common commitment to intentionally and systematically care for each other. We must plant it and grow it now. He's talking about cultivating environments that nudge people towards their better angels, where caring becomes contagious, where hospitality and sharing are the norms. Of course, those of us immersed in church know this stuff. This is in our DNA, and we have a language for it. Mercy and justice, pastoral care, fellowship and breaking bread, reconciliation, songs and psalms, poetry, communal rituals like baptism, all of which are the needles and threads by which we weave a community together into a fabric that brings life and well-being and hope for all. As for the 5 smooth stones, I'll leave that for you to imagine and choose. But here's a few thoughts. Firstly, joy. I heard a quote once where a woman said that when her daughter was born, she realized she loved her more than evolution required. This quote points to something deep, an inexplicable care for another, a finding of oneself, one's true self, when the I is joined to the we. for happiness is good. We want people to be happy. It's a nourishment and an expansion of the self. But joy is something else. It's the moment when the skin barrier disappears between a parent and their child, or between two long-term lovers, partners, spouses. It's the moment when you realize the conditionality of love is dissolving into the unconditional, that you are losing yourself into a bigger self. It's the moment of awe when you become one with something other than yourself. Happiness is about the individual. Joy is about the relationship. Secondly, borrowing from Baxter, communal mahi. This is where we give up for a time, working for ourselves or our families, down our usual tools, and join with others to build something that we personally may never benefit from. So it has three ingredients. Firstly, it's for the common good. It is giving to others for their benefit and maybe not our own. Secondly, it is working with and alongside others. The collegial, the communal is important here. It's like an old-fashioned bottle drive or a not-so-old-fashioned church working bee. The benefit is only partially in the money raised or the cobwebs collected. The bigger benefit is the fellowship built around a shared task, being part of a community bigger than ourselves. And lastly, communal mahi is about doing something physical with our bodies rather than just our minds or wallets. And thirdly, lastly, gratitude. A practice and mantra of gratitude will lead us away from the seductive messages of Goliath. Messages like, I've done this all by myself, and I deserve everything I've got, and I'm responsible only for me. Messages, again, which might have a grain of truth in them, but also a whole lot of untruths. For most of the blessings in life arise from the gifts of others, our very conception, DNA, birth. We are fused with others. We are interdependent. We are part of a wide, braided river of our culture and history. We belong to a wonderful ecological world which nourishes our bodies and souls. Every day we need to say to ourselves and against Goliath, I'm thankful. Every day we need to say to ourselves and against Goliath, I'm blessed. Including and especially when you're not feeling thankful or blessed. Every day we need to remind ourselves, no matter how small or feeble we feel, that we're connected in myriad ways, often unknown to ourselves. We are weaving with many others that colourful and strong fabric of our together future. Have a great week.